This is Angie Gallion Level for Hometown Novel Nights in conjunction with the Noonan Carnegie Library. We have Roger Johns, the author of the Wallace Hartman Mystery Series, with us today. Roger, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, Angie. How are you?
So good. I'm glad you could be here with us today. I know you were with us at Hometown Novel Nights last month, and we had some technical difficulties. So much of your time was cut from the program, and we just wanted to give you some time to share your wonderful work with our audience. So I have a few questions for you today, if you're up for that. So thanks for being with us.
Well, I'll give you my best shot.
Sounds good. So now I understand that you came to writing after a career as a corporate lawyer. Is that correct?
But not exactly. After, yes, but not right after. After I left practicing law, I became a college professor and did that for decades. So it was after I retired from teaching that I took up writing full-time, although I dabbled in it here and there over the years.
So did you always have an interest in writing?
I think so. I didn't have an ambition to be a professional writer until later in life, but I always enjoyed putting words down on pages, and I always enjoyed, trying to figure out a good story and get those thoughts lined up where somebody else might want to read them. It just, I was never in my earlier days focused enough. I was too busy trying to do career and schooling and the like. I just never took the time to focus on it until I was done with all that other stuff.
All that other stuff. Now, your first book was Dark River Rising. That's right? The first book
Correct.
In the Wallace Hartman series. Now,
yeah.
I understand that story had a pretty significant identity crisis. I would like for you to share a little bit about that, if you would.
Well, the story was a long time in the making. The original idea came to me in a flash one day when I was on my way to teach a class, and it just rolled around in my head forever, unable to find a real place to get traction, so to speak. And then eventually I figured out this is how it's going to work. This is how the book is going to end. And I started writing it, and I thought, I'm really on to something here. And I kept stalling out about 70 or 80 pages in. For years it went on like this, until one day this voice in the back of my head said, you're telling this story through the eyes of the wrong character. At the time, my main character was a male, and I had given him just about every possible law enforcement related identity I could think of, as a private detective, a police officer, you name it. And it just wouldn't go. And that voice in my head said, this story needs to be told by a woman. So
wow.
I changed it. Yeah, it was crazy. It was terrifying because I had never attempted anything like that. Had no idea how to do it. But once I changed that piece of my thinking about who this story was supposed to be told by, the book literally wrote itself in a period of about a year, with a lot of help, I might add, from my wife and from others who saw pieces of it here and there.
So I understand that you had... Yes, sir.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I understood from a previous interview I'd seen with you that you actually had several women who helped you with your female voice for this character.
That's correct.
Is that correct? Yeah.
It is. After I got the
book
finished, my wife said, you need some help with this, pal. So I joined a women's writing. I begged my way into a women's writing group in Decatur, Georgia, and over a period of about 18 months, they taught me how to do it. Well,
That's
they taught
fantastic.
me as much as I know. I don't know if I know how to do it, but what I do know, that's where I got it.
So that's how Wallace Hartman became a woman.
Correct.
Which I think is such an interesting concept. I know that sometimes whenever I write, I have identity crisis in novels, and sometimes they end up being something totally different than what I envisioned in the beginning. But one thing you did say that I think was very fascinating is that you actually had reached the conclusion, the ending of your novel, before you ever sat down to write. So you knew how it ended before you sat down to write a single word.
I have to have a target. I have to know what I'm aiming for. If I don't, I just wander around.
Yes, I've been guilty of that. So would you consider yourself a plotter or a pantser?
A plotter. I think
Very
without
good.
question.
That's why it
I know
rolled
where I'm
around
headed
for so long. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So let's go on to our next question. You have been very successful with traditional publishing realm, and I know that there's a lot of us small authors out there who are very excited to learn more about that. But I understand that some changes are in the works for you. Would you like to share with our listeners how your move away from your current publisher has impacted you personally and as a writer?
Sure. I did have some success early on. It took a while to get there. A lot of bites at that apple, so to speak, before I found a publisher for the book. And after 2 volumes in the Wallace Hartman series, they decided to discontinue the series. Wasn't selling enough books. So now I am what my agent calls an orphan. I've been left high and dry by the publishing world. And her advice to me was, you now must do something different to separate yourself from the branding that you attached to yourself with those first books, because at the moment, or at the time, everyone who read my books associated me as the author of the Wallace Hartman series, and now I have to become someone else. So the way to do that is to either change my name, which I don't think I'm going to do, and write under a pseudonym. That doesn't sound attractive to me, especially when you go to writers' conferences, because there you are and they know who you are. But she said you have to write something completely different, a standalone, one that doesn't associate you with a particular type of character or a particular location for a story, something that sort of sets you free to start your career again. So that's what I'm doing. And in the meantime, as that book is working its way out of my brain, I've been writing a lot of short stories.
I've always been, I remember you
mentioned
that. And I wondered, because short story writing and novel writing are 2 completely different mindsets. Can you talk a little bit about how you adjust your focus from one to the other and how you find those different ways of writing?
Well, some ideas I think just don't have many pages or many words in them. They can be addressed in a fairly short format. That said, it's not always easy to get the job done because there are certain aspects of a story, whether it's long or short, that have to be present. It doesn't matter whether it's a novel length or a multi-volume length or just a few pages. There has to be a story arc and the character has to change just a little bit. And that's really hard for me, for someone who's used to just going on and on about something with seemingly endless vistas to express myself. So it's taken me a while. It can sometimes take a month or 2 to write a story that's only 10 pages long because the plot holes in something like that are very apparent. A reader gets through the piece in a very short period of time, and they still have the entire story locked in their head. So anything that's wrong with it, they're going to see. And as a writer, anything that's wrong with it, you're going to see it as you do it. So it's a constant battle for me to work something out where it happens just exactly right in a short number of pages. That said, I have discovered that it makes my chapter writing in longer pieces much better because I've adapted the tricks of going short to the chapter writing that I'm using as I write this new book. So each chapter I feel like is tighter. My use of language is better. My understanding of story mechanics is better. And there are some things with my prose that I wasn't quite happy with those first 2 books, and I'm having a chance to learn how to deal with that, writing short stories. It's like short lessons to learn new things that you can apply to bigger projects.
Fantastic.
That was
so
totally
really
boring.
It's an opportunity. No, that wasn't totally boring. I find that very interesting because short stories is something that I really do struggle with. But I did really at one point focus on honing a chapter because I was very much a scene writer, and I had to figure out how to make a chapter tell a complete story and make it hold together. So I totally understand what you're saying, and I think that's very fascinating, the way that you can look back at your previous work and say, you know, there are things that I could have improved here. They were good, but my next book is going to be better. And I think that's something we all strive for. So I wish you good luck with that.
Well, thank you.
So I as you well know, I have not really done a big traditional publishing myself. I started out as a small press indie writer and was picked up by a small press. So, and that's kind of where I'm happy. I would love to find a large publishing house that wanted to take a chance on me, but I think I'm a little bit eclectic for a large publishing house. I don't know that they would know where to put me, and I really do like having that the freedom to write the way I love to write. So, but there are many people, and I'm interested in this also, to talk a little bit about your journey with the traditional publishing and what recommendations might you have for someone who's aspiring to emulate to that.
Well, my experience with them was fascinating. It was a great education. I learned, it was almost like going to college, that 4-year experience I had with St. Martin's Press over which they published my 2 books. The insights into the publishing world are the kinds of things that you get when you're under a lot of deadline pressure and you're having to tailor your efforts to the particular way a publisher produces its product. And not every publisher, large or small, does it the same way. Each one has its own quirks and its own traditions. So you learn how to develop your skills and your talents in a way that's directed toward the needs of this person that is sort of taking control of what the creative process is in your life in order to bridge the gap between you, the creative writer, and the commercial market out there. And that was always my goal, was to be a commercial writer.
Right.
It's something that I think anyone who wants to do that needs to read a lot of the books of the type that they want to be successful writing. And the reason I say that is because all publishers, I don't care who they are, large or small, what kind of books they publish, they all essentially publish the same thing, and that is a book that meets certain commercial benchmarks. They all want to publish successful books. And there's a certain level of prose competence that you have to have. And this was the big lesson that I learned, that if you have a beautifully written story with some plot problems, you're much more likely to be successful with that than you are a book that's perfectly plotted, that's poorly written. That may not have always been the case, but today editors don't have the luxury of taking 1 or 2 projects from start to finish during the year. They might be dealing with a dozen or more. So for someone to take a manuscript from me that needs a lot of work at the sentence level and the paragraph level, that would take an enormous amount of editorial time.
Right.
For them to devote to editing that and then going back and forth with me to make sure I get it right. Whereas an editor can read a manuscript and say, you know, this is really, really well written. This person knows how to put the words down on the page in a way that we can sell. There are a few story problems. I'm going to spend an hour or 2 putting together an edit letter describing these story problems, and then I'm going to tell the author to fix it. It's not a lot of time on the part of the editor, a huge amount of effort on the part of the author to meet those demands. But the reverse of that won't work, where the editor has to invest huge numbers of hours trying to figure out how to teach this writer how to write. That's just not going to happen. It may have happened at one time, but it's not going to happen anymore. So you have to learn how to hit the mark. And there are very specific things that they're looking for. And I actually took a writing class from a successful Atlanta writer, showed me how to do that.
Fantastic. So really, the key is learn how to write.
The key is learn how to create commercially acceptable prose.
Very good.
And you have to be able to tell a story, but it's easier for them to do story edits than sentence and line and word edits. Yeah,
absolutely. So what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect of your writing journey?
Well, there are a lot of things about it that I've just enjoyed the heck out of. I would say the best aspect of it is the chance to go out into the world and do book events, either at libraries or bookstores or conferences. You name it, I've done them all. Private events. The chance to get out there and meet people and talk to readers and talk to other writers and make friends with readers and make friends with other writers. I remember going to the event that you did with Sharon Marcasello a few months ago, which seems like ages ago. It's obvious that there's this camaraderie between the authors up on the stage.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing to see from the point of view of a reader. It's a fabulous thing to participate in as a fellow writer. So I would say the best part for me is making so many friends, making so many new acquaintances, and getting to participate in the part of the business where, people meet people. It's been a blast.
I agree with you. I think that's one of my favorite things, too. I love the feedback I get from readers for my books, and I love meeting people and talking about writing. And the other thing that I really love about the writer community, especially in the South Atlanta area where we are, is that everybody is so supportive. I don't feel like it's a competitive against each other industry for us small writers in the local area. Everybody's trying to support each other and sharing the word about other people's books and talking about what one of us does well and what somebody else does well. And I just think that's such an amazing thing. And I don't know very many businesses that are like that, but I really do feel like on the grassroots level of the writing industry, us writers are so supportive of one another, and I just think that's incredible.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of room on the shelf, as they say, and it's hard. It's technically a difficult thing to do. Creatively, it's a difficult thing to do, but emotionally, it's really, really hard because you're constantly exposing your insides to the outside world and hoping that they find it worthy. So it's a hard thing to be able to get the courage up to do that over and over again. And I think people involved in this understand that and know that it's better to cultivate other writers and to help them along because you never know when the next great thing is going to come out of somebody, and you want to be there for that. You just do.
That's exactly right. You do. And you want to celebrate with them. And that's an interesting thing, what you just said about how, as writers, one of the things that we always do is we're always putting ourselves out there. And yes, everything that I write is fictionalized, but there is a lot of me in there. And I wonder how much of you is in your book. Because I think that's true. I think we really do put a lot of ourselves on the page.
My perspective on things is there. In terms of actual events, there are a few things from my life that have shown up on the page that I've put into the mouths and the minds of the characters, but not very many. I would say the most important part of me that has come out in these books is the sense of danger and the sense of constant violence that hovers over the environment of these books, and that came from a few years of me working in a rather dangerous industry in a rather chaotic part of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is where these two books were set. The people I worked around were frequently involved in interpersonal violence, and the part of the city they lived in was very industrial and very dangerous for a lot of reasons. And that sensation stuck with me. And this was back in the late 70s. And it's still with me today. So that I can tell you what an intense experience it was. And I try to bring that to the page as I write these books. And for the readers or for the listeners who are hearing me and don't know me, I'm a mystery writer. I write crime thrillers, and they're very intense. And I want to bring that sense of foreboding and that sense that anything can happen, especially something dangerous, at any moment in the story. For me, that's the fuel that keeps them going.
And I think you've done that successfully with both of these books. I feel that intensity when I read them, and I do think that you've brought that across. And there is such a sense of something ominous lurking.
Thank you. I worked very hard at that.
Well, I think you've been successful, and I hope that others will check out your books. I'd like for you to tell readers where they can find your books. I know you were published out of St. Martin's Press, so they should be available in some of the large bookstores. And also share with us your website and any other social media you'd like to share.
Sure. The books can be ordered through any major retailer. I don't know if they still have them in the stores, but they can be ordered through any major retailer. They can be ordered from Amazon. They're fairly easy to get hold of, either as in-print hardcovers or as ebooks. And my website is rogerjohnsbooks.com. And I do have a social media presence, but most of my interface with the reading world comes through the website. So that would be the best place to look.
Fantastic. Is there anything else that you would like for our listeners to know about Roger Johns and his upcoming ventures?
Well, I have some mystery stories coming out. Spanky and Delilah Are in Love, which is about a dog park romance and a chance meeting with an aging mobster. And that will be coming out in Mystery Weekly magazine sometime in the not-too-distant future. And I have another story, Honor Among Thieves, which is about two con artists who have a bit of a falling out. And that will be coming out in an Atlanta Writers Club-sponsored anthology, Viral Literature, Alone Together in Georgia. And that should be coming out sometime around the 1st of December from SFK Press, Southern Fried Karma.
Very good. That is excellent. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. I really appreciate you taking this time. I know that we always like to have you involved in our hometown novel night events. You're always a good draw for for readers, and you always have a good following whenever you come out. So we really appreciate you taking this time with us today.
Sure. Happy to do it anytime, Angie. It's great talking to you, and thank you for doing this interview. I'll look forward to you at a book event in the future.
It will be coming, sooner or later we're going to get back to the live events, and that will be awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Roger. Have a great day.
Thanks, Angie. Stay safe. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.